everybody, and welcome back to Ask the Unfaithful. As always, my name is Sam. I am the eye candy, and I'm joined by my distinguished host, brother, best friend, compadre, James Anir. How are you, my good friend?
I am fantastic. Thank you, Sam. I'm listening to a little Jim Morrison back there. So, I don't know. That might elevate or weird out everybody's day.
Well, we just lost some people, but that's okay. We'll get them back. How's the shoulder? Give us the shoulder update before we jump into the episode today.
Shoulder is, I think the range of motion is getting better. So, yeah,
That's
man.
good. We are so thankful on behalf of James and I for your email, for your comments on our episodes. We're even thankful for some of the negative comments, but we are just grateful. I think I can speak for James and tell you that we are incredibly grateful to get to do what we do.
Right.
We are humbled and honored that our life has this mission and goal to it. And very soon, we will have all of our episodes on Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts to make it easier. That is in production as we speak. Today's episode is based upon a question that I think is a brilliant question that we all have to ask ourselves as unfaithful, and that is, what are the two most overlooked keys to recovery? And make no mistake about it, there are keys to recovery. There are things that if you do them, they can increase the chance of success of your relationship 100-fold. And there are things that you do if you overlook them, that if you refuse to do them, can increase the chance of divorce and disintegration 100-fold. So, James, talk to us about the first one. What's the first most overlooked key to recovery work?
So that would be urgency.
Hmm.
So most of us start out with an incredible amount of urgency on just when we're discovered, right? It's like basically our pants are on fire. So we're going to be scrambling around, doing something, getting stuff done. Maybe we call therapists, maybe we call coaches, maybe we get into 12-step, maybe we do this and we do that, and we start reading and we do everything possible. And there's in order to stop the behaviors, right? And man, it's like, okay, if I can just stop these, it's all going to be done and it's all going to be good. There's tons of urgency behind it at that point. Yeah, because we're in trouble.
That's exactly right.
Yes, experience that. Then we kind of go through this stage, and this is funny because a lot of people will go, what? But I'm going to call it detox, right? So if we think about drug users, for instance, or people have a problem with alcohol abuse, they are going to go into treatment, which initially is detox, right? So that detox is where all the toxins are getting out of their body, right? So people go, well, with this too? Well, yeah, absolutely, because we have been doing all kinds of toxic behaviors. They've actually had a lot of physical effects on us. And so when we start going through this initial recovery, I remember in the first, probably after the first month, I started getting sick, like
Mm.
catching colds and flu and stuff. And that lasted for about 6 months more. And that was really interesting because a lot of people that I asked were having that experience, right? And so there actually is a physiological response to when we stop all these things that amplify our dopamine, our adrenaline, serotonin, endorphins, and so on, right? And oxytocin, all of the big deals, the big hormones. And we start having real issues. And part of that is because we've been constantly releasing cortisone during this time, and that has basically fundamentally broken down our immune response. So that's a really interesting piece. And then we have other physiological responses, wanting to sleep more or not sleeping enough, and so on. So you get really increased anxiety, all kinds of things that actually look a lot like drug detox. They might not be as extreme or severe,
Right.
but they are there. And so during that period, we're actually pretty vulnerable physically, but also mentally. So our anxiety is high, and depression can set in if it's not there already. That's a thing for another podcast that we'll go into. After detox, we kind of get to that place where we're a few months in, starting to get stabilized, right? Our acute acting out, like the desire to act out, that really acute desire subsides. We're able to handle that. It's like if anybody out there has ever given up cigarettes, you know, you think about cigarettes constantly. You always want one.
Right.
Any behavior a cigarette was associated with, your morning coffee, whatever, your, you know, every time that I know, whenever I surfed, I would smoke before and smoke after. It was the weirdest thing because people think, oh, surfers, they're healthy. No. So, you know, it was that can take a lot to overcome those times when you're sort of, it's all associated with something else. And so once that really strong desire starts to subside, we start feeling better. There's some relief in that. A lot of people go to get this like pink cloud. Oh wow, everything's great. Your vision's more acute. All your senses are more acute. You feel really good because you're doing the right thing. You're floating on a cloud, and then you start.
Right.
Oh, I've got this. I got this, man. Which is the, as I've said before, the death knell for anybody who's trying to do this is the I got this, because you don't. The pink cloud will make you feel that way though, and so that's a very dangerous thing. The problem with that is that when we're in pink clouding, our urgency really dissipates. So as the pink clouding, you know, is associated with success. So we're feeling successful, we've stopped the behaviors, and so on. So our urgency starts to ebb. And, you know, staying on top of everything, being aware of everything, really vigilant, starts to become less and less important. And we start going on autopilot. And
And that's where I think, as an unfaithful, we think, well, they're not bringing it up, so I don't need to bring anything up, right? So we kind of go into the autopilot of go along to get along. Everything's cool. They're not bringing it up, so I'm not bringing it up. And then a few days, maybe a week goes by, and then a betrayed finally goes, boom. You know what? You don't talk about it. You don't bring it up. You think everything's great. And us unfaithful are like, what are you talking about? You're coming at me like it's out of nowhere. And the problem is, it's not out of nowhere to the betrayed. They've been wrestling with these thoughts every day, every hour, but they've been waiting for you, male or female, as an unfaithful, to show some leadership and show some initiative, right? To bring up the hard conversations. But we make the mistake, out of sight, out of mind. They're not talking about it. I'm not going to talk about it. Everything's good, right?
yes, you're dead on. And the other part of that is, even if they are, it's like, well, why I'm doing fine. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. Why aren't they over it yet? What's going on? You know,
Check a box, check a box, check a box.
yes, all those checked boxes really don't add up to much unless there's feeling behind it, unless
Yeah.
there's connection behind it, unless there's continued desire to grow as a human being behind it, right? Otherwise, it's just, okay, this is a problem. I've got 10 things to check off. I'm done.
Yeah.
Why? And so the urgency or emergency, right, is lapsing and going, and that's really a problem, because then you've got two people heading in. One's wanting to know, why are you not focusing on this? Why are you not learning about this? Why are you not focusing on what's happening with us? And you're just kind of going back to these same old things that you've always done. Maybe not acting out, but when we're on that autopilot, we've lost sight of what's important, which is our relationship, our supports, our program, if you will, which is basically the ABCs and one, two, threes, the checkboxes of what got us here in the first place, which, by the way, we can't afford to forget what gets us here in the first place.
No, not at all.
And then we get this relapse attitude, or, you know, this sort of this, it's a relapse of thinking, a relapse of feeling. We lose the urgency and the priority, and we go back to living life as we used to without acting out,
And
because
the betrayed is terrified. The betrayed is absolutely terrified.
they see it. They see it happening because we get lax. And we'll find out the hard way, but basically you're going in one of two directions. Either you're on the road to recovery or you're on the road to relapse.
And would you agree with this? Many betrayed will say to their unfaithful, it feels like how it used to be. And then the unfaithful will, our head will spin around because, like an exorcism, because we feel like, don't you see all that I've been doing? How dare you say this feels like what it used to be like? Well, because the betrayed's nervous system is like red alert, red alert. I don't feel safe. I don't feel like you really mean business. I felt like at the front end you were like so serious and you were so committed, and now because I don't talk about it, or I'm not raging, or I'm not bringing it up, or I'm not having these big emotions, now you are slowly but surely slip sliding, and it's only been a few months, and it's terrifying to the betrayed's nervous system, right?
Yes. And it undermines trust, right? And so trust means it's trust that will allow well, trust, which equals safety, that will allow a partner to be able to sort of go, okay, I'm starting to have some belief that what my partner's doing is working, and they're committed to this, and so on. If they don't see that, what does it do? It creates a lack of safety or a feeling or a threat, right? And so they've got to see that. And then what's going to happen is if a partner, a betrayed partner, feels a lack of work or a threat, what's going to happen with their emotions? They're going to be traumatized again. They're going to be in that trauma spiral because now they're back to hypervigilance. So this has huge consequences.
And it's hypervigilance. And then I know this is true for me. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who the betrayed, male or female, feel like they're having to parent their unfaithful. And that's disgusting to them because they're like, you're supposed to be my partner. And I don't even know if I want you as my partner, but now I'm having to parent you. And this is disgusting to me because I feel like I have to babysit you, which only reinforces resentment and anger and bitterness in the mind of the betrayed. And why would it not? Because now they're having to drive the bus all over again.
And and then the questions of from the unfaithful of why is this taking you so long? Well, this can be one of the key reasons why it's taking so
Mm.
long, because it's constantly putting a betrayed partner back in to that same place where they were at discovery or very close to it, right? Which is re-traumatizing and sends them into the spiral. So this is one of the major reasons why we have to keep up this sense of urgency.
Because you say it this way, because there's kind of the inflation of our ego, right?
So as we feel like, oh, I've got this, right? I know how to do this. I'm feeling, we get better and better at not doing the behaviors that we were doing. And they could be the acting out behaviors, right? Which actually is really quite simple to stop. I'm not saying easy, but simple. It's the depth work that's much more difficult, which is what, in a sense, we're kind of going, okay, I've got this. I don't have to do anymore.
Yeah.
So the ego then has inflated, and that stops us from following the recovery plan that we have, right? And that also includes, by the way, our relapse prevention plan, right? So everybody out there, do you have a relapse prevention plan? That's a big key, right? It tells you, oh, maybe it could tell you that your sense of urgency is lagging. Then we have what happens there is, okay, maybe we can not act out in the old ways. But what happens when that acting out transfers into something else? We'll probably do a big podcast on that. But something else can look like new ways of escaping alcohol,
Mhm.
different sexual stuff, or even going from sexual to emotional, or drugs, gambling, shopping more, that kind of thing. Anything to ease that pain and avoid being in the emotions. That likelihood grows significantly. We end up white knuckling, right? Which isn't going to do anybody any good, because then we're just holding our emotions at bay rather than dealing with them and processing them. And when we sort of lose this urgency, we're also going to lose perspective and clarity. And then we're going to start to justify and rationalize doing old things, being around old people, the people, places, things that we'll drift back into. And then we're going to act out one way or the other, maybe something that we've substituted, but we're going to end up acting out if we don't have that sense of urgency.
And even if we don't act out, we start to at least display high risk behavior
Yeah.
that makes the betrayed levitate off the ground with worry and fear. And then the unfaithful, we can be so stupid, we'll be like, what's the big deal? I just missed a meeting. I just missed a group call. I just didn't do our homework, or we didn't have our meeting this week, the husband and wife or couple. And it only takes a few I justs before the radar of the betrayed goes, this is scaring the life out of me. And then we unfaithful are like, what's the big deal? And don't you agree that anytime that we start saying, what's the big deal, we're kind of teetering in the wrong direction?
Oh, yeah, we're on the road to relapse. Make no mistake, what you're talking about is emotional relapse, right?
Hmm.
So I talk about acting out, and if we associate that only with the behaviors, the list of behaviors that we did, sexually or emotionally or whatever before, I mean, with another person, or porn, or however that looked, then yes, absolutely, those are acting out. But emotional acting out is not having the respect or the thoughtfulness or the empathy and so on that your betrayed partner deserves. And so, we have to watch that. I'm sure every unfaithful out there is overjoyed to hear that when you're not acting emotionally appropriately, that is acting out. But it's emotional relapse.
Well, no, and I just love I love I love us in that we have made so many mistakes. We have done so many things wrong that so many times during our episodes, I want to stop and go, unfaithful, please, God, hear me. Please hear James. If you can do this or not do this, this will save your life. So let me ask you, okay, urgency is such a big deal. It's one of the first ones. How do we maintain a sense of urgency? What are some keys that we can do to maintain urgency? Or if we're an unfaithful and we're listening right now and we go, holy crap, you know what? I have lost that sense of urgency. What are some tools that we can give them?
So one of my favorite quotes is energy always follows priority. It's
I
actually
love that quote so much.
it's great. Where priority goes is where energy flows, right? So um, if I make something a priority, like continuing that sense of urgency, then guess what? My energy is going to go towards that. By sense of urgency here, I mean, making it number one.
Yeah.
So everything, and I'm not talking about just the behaviors. I'm talking about that emotional work, the empathy work, the interaction, the sense of presence, and so on that's needed for relational recovery. So that has to be committed to. It's got to be, and you got to commit daily. I didn't, wake up. I didn't wake up and go, okay, I'm going to be. This is my priority, and then not think about it being my priority anymore.
Right.
I did that every single day. I did it first thing in the morning in my journal. That was my priority. I wrote down several things that created that priority for me
Yeah.
for the entire day and moving forward. And you got to keep your eye on the prize. And the prize is what? It can be individual recovery. It can be that place of I just never want to go into that area of my life again. I want to grow spiritually as a human and so on. And if you are working towards staying in this coupleship, then the prize has to be about the we, as Sharon and I call it, which is the two of you together, right? That's the prize. So you may not have that right now. You probably don't, but that's the thing to keep your eye on. You're not going to have it if you don't maintain that sense of urgency. One of the ways that you keep your eye on the prize is defining your values so that you have a clear view of, well, these are my family values, these are my individual values, and so on. And you follow those, especially while you're defining what your goals are individually and together. And then you develop ways to achieve those goals and you follow that plan, right? This is a practical way to keep moving towards that prize and keep urgent.
How do you help couples with this? Because this is a common scenario is that there comes a point where it's like, oh my gosh, Sam, we're doing so much. James, we're doing something every night. We've got so much stuff going on. How do you help people not burn out when they're in recovery?
So, number one thing, practice self-care. We're also going to do
Yeah.
a podcast on that, unbeknownst to you at the moment, but we are. I like. It makes me so happy to send you stuff that surprises you.
I love it.
So, in an earlier podcast, we talked about top lines, right? So, outer circle behaviors. These are things that keep you, not just keep you clean and sober, right, from your old behaviors, but they keep you growing. This is all about growing as a human being, becoming the human being that you are wanting to be, that you are supposed to be, whatever that looks like, right? Somebody who lives in their integrity. And so those top lines can be things like, making sure that you exercise, something as simple as that. But, a lot of these things are listed. So therapy, coaching, going for walks, doing things that calm yourself, spending time in reflection, reading, and all of these things that are going to, and by the way, doing creative things. Creativity is huge. So doing things that are fun and play, and I know there are going to be some betrayeds out there going, play, what do you mean? Well, what I mean is, let's say that you like fly fishing, taking some time to go fly fishing, and it doesn't have to be an inordinate amount of time, but just taking some time and doing something that brings you peace,
Yeah.
right? So and so you have this whole list. So it can be meditation, prayer, and so on. And you do these things. You don't have to do them all every day, but if you have a sufficient list, you're going to be able to pick two or three that you're going to do that day. By the way, that was also something I would write in my journal. What top lines am I going to do today? Right? I always had what are bottom lines that I'm going to avoid, even long into my recovery when I didn't even go near those things. And then I had those middle ones, the boundary behaviors that were dangerous for me, things like letting other people shame me, that kind of thing, self-criticism, those sorts of things. And those always got written down, but those top lines every single time, because they're as important as the other. If you don't make them as important as the other, you're going to be in a world of, you're going to be up the creek, right? So part of that not burning out is socializing with other people who are in recovery or who know what's up. So there's fellowship and accountability within that. And you can, guess what? You can actually have a good time with those people. Like
Yeah.
I went out for dinner with my sponsor many times where we weren't actually, I mean, ultimately, much later on, where we weren't talking about recovery. We were just enjoying each other's company. We're both, clean, sober, enjoying each other's company, having fun.
But I think it's worth saying it's vital that we are in same-sex recovery environments, right?
Yes.
Removing temptation, removing any opportunity to let our guard down with someone that could just be dangerous and make the betrayed feel massively unsafe.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. It's always with respect to the betrayed. Who are they going to be comfortable with? With my sponsor, Sharon's going to be comfortable with him any day of the week. She would love for me to spend more time with him even, right? But there's no problem there. So it does have to be that, and that means communication surrounding that, which brings me to a really good point. You have to have a structure and a plan, not just a relapse prevention plan, but a progressive plan, right?
Absolutely. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You have to have a plan surrounding your recovery work.
Yeah. And part of that plan is always the consideration of how your betrayed is going to feel about whatever you're planning on doing.
Everything. Concerts that you'll go to, movies that you'll watch, friends that you'll hang out with,
Yep.
all of it, right?
All of it. And, people are going to go, oh, what, I got to report in on everything right now? Yeah. Because your
Well, but if
trust
you see it,
isn't there yet.
excuse me, if you see it as reporting in, well, then you're framing it that way. How about having some inclusion? How about having some closeness and togetherness? How about thinking about someone besides yourself, right? Maybe your betrayed party.
Right. Yes. So Sharon and I are still on Life 360, which is, a tracking, I don't know if it's Apple or whatever, but it's a tracking thing. right? She
Yeah.
knows where I am all the time. I know where she is all the time. It's not about checking up on each other. Although I must say, I was looking the other day because I was like, okay, why is this taking so long? She went, she was off here, and I figured she'd be back by now. So I saw where she was, and I said, oh, can you grab me some McDonald's? so,
Yep.
so it's kind of what normal couples do, like regular
Because
couples do that.
you have this in the notes, I want to add to it that there's kind of this understanding that to a certain extent, a predictor of future behavior is an analysis of the past.
Mhm.
And while people can change, if we as unfaithfuls forget who we were and what we did and what we're capable of, we're unsafe for ourselves, let alone our partner and our family, right?
Yeah, so the way that we change is being consistent. And if we start to get lax on the things that are helping us change, then we're not going to be consistent on them. So absolutely, we have to be aware of that, or the past is the best predictor of our future behavior. Now, we don't want that. We want to disprove that. So if we have that plan and we know what are in any situation, then we can go, okay, this is the plan, right? This is my
And
fallback. This is what I know is I have to do.
I think before we talk about the number two most overlooked keys to recovery, I tell unfaithful this almost every day in my coaching sessions is there comes a point where I say, stop telling your partner or your husband or wife what you're going to do and just start doing it. Stop telling them and show them. Show them how you're going to therapy. Show them how you're going to a meeting that you're going to. Show them that you're reading books. Show them that you're watching podcasts. Stop telling them. Show them. Put some actions behind what you're doing, because if you don't have a plan in place and that you're just, we talk about this all the time, if it's just a knee-jerk, sloppy recovery, you are not gaining any points of reliability or trust or dependability or safety in the heart of the betrayed. So let's move on. The second
So
most overlooked.
before we move on, can I comment on that? Because I
Sure,
want it to be
absolutely.
clear that you're telling your partner these things to inform them. You're not telling them to be lauded or praised or patted on the back for doing it. That's not their position. That is not for them to be doing.
No.
You can celebrate and revel in your own accomplishments or with other sober supports that, hey, wow, I did that. I'm so happy that I did that. But if you put that on your partner, it's not, it's the opposite of helpful. So I just wanted
Absolutely.
to add that
No,
in.
I think it's a wonderful clarification, because the moment that we want applause for doing what we should be doing, we are unsafe. So what's the second most overlooked key to recovery work for the unfaithful?
I know this one's going to surprise you. Gratitude.
It is surprising, but uh, there's so much truth in it. So what does that look like?
Gratitude looks like a lot of things, but mostly, and we're going to give you some ways to do this that are actually concrete ways to do it, right? Because if you're just kind of going, okay, each day I'll be grateful, well, probably you're going to end up not doing it. That's human, right?
Yeah,
That isn't even just an unfaithful thing. That's just human. We'll forget to do things. So, okay, we're going to make it part of a plan. We're going to give you some concrete things to do because it can be really challenging, to be thankful when life sometimes seems to be a downer, or it's really stressful, or you're feeling shame or guilt, or feeling like you've screwed things up so badly that there's no way out of that, no way to get better. You're going to worry, there's regret, there's anger, there's sadness. All these things can be swirling around while you're in early recovery, especially. But believe me, they can still come up further into recovery. And
yeah.
you can have a really bad day, right? And that's going to be really hard to feel grateful about anything. So that's a matter of recognizing that and doing it anyway. Because if you practice gratitude, it actually has been shown in studies to increase emotional and mental well being. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, it reduces our stress because we're focused on the things we're grateful for and we're not focused on our worries, right? I mean, I'm not saying that, we don't worry, right? It doesn't, just doesn't take away worry, but it certainly helps us to go, yeah, I've got all these wonderful things going on as well. It also changes our perspective, right? But from negative to thankfulness kind of helps us see our issues in reality instead of just one-sided, right? So it's
Yeah.
showing us kind of, I'm looking for something that's two-sided. Okay, so I've got this book here, right? And then I show you the back. That's two different perspectives. So let's say I've got negative and positive, right? It kind of gives us that balance in our perspective and can shift that. So then we can have a little more energy towards continuing to do things. By changing that perspective, it's going to help us manage our recovery and our lives more effectively to achieve the goals that we talked about earlier in the sense of urgency.
Right.
So it also, it, interestingly, it creates hope. We're not going to get very far without, typically anyway, without hope. I mean, we can grind it. I'm a grinder, man. I'll keep doing something. If I'm told to do it, my shoulder, the work on my shoulder, that's no fun. I don't want to do it. Feels better in the sling. But, knowing that it's going to get better, I don't, that creates hope. So I'm not having to just grind at it and go, oh, here we go again. Right.
Yeah. I love that. There's a saying, I'm looking at my bookshelf. I can't remember what book it is, but there's a saying, hope is not a strategy. We're not looking for hope to be a strategy, but we need hope to keep going. Hope for our own healing, hope for the healing of our family, hope for the healing of our marriage or our relationship. And whatever we can do to stoke the fire of hope, like a backyard fire, I think is helpful. What about the feeling? I mean, I have this in the notes, but how does hope create resilience?
By expressing our gratitude, it's going to make us feel good. When we feel
Mm.
better, content, then the hope's going to be there where it wasn't before. You brought up fire. That's energy, right? It's going to give us energy to move through these steps. The emotional resilience comes from those more positive feelings in the hopefulness, and the gratitude for what we're, for the things that are good in our life, and help us cope with the negative things much better, right? It doesn't mean that the negative things go away. This isn't magical thinking. They're still there, but it just gives us a little more oomph in terms of handling those things. Okay, I can accept that that's here, and I can do something about it, and I can feel hopeful about that. So that's how it helps develop that emotional resilience.
I love that. We just did a podcast on emotional intelligence, but I mean, emotional resilience is mandatory if we're going to make it to the other side, right?
Not everybody has it. Many of us who have
No.
lived lives based in shame and negative worldview and all of that, and there are many of us unfaithfuls who have lived that way, really deserve to have some hope, and we need some hope. And if we can get that through, essentially being grateful for things, I'm not saying it's going to be easy to get. Let me list 10 things I can be grateful for. Early on, that's probably really hard. So one, two, three. Yeah, okay, we might be
Yeah.
able to do that. Here's an interesting piece that the more grateful or more gratitude we express, right? So that we name and label and express, the more our self-esteem and self-worth are improved. And there's
Hmm.
a difference between the two. Self-esteem is really, it's a self-image, positive self-image, our ability, it's a belief in our ability to overcome whatever hardships we're experiencing. And it comes when we acknowledge and appreciate others, appreciate and acknowledge the gifts of recovery, our own progress, and our blessings, right? So this is why that it's not self-congratulatory, but it is, hey, I did accomplish this. That was great. That means what? I can do it again, right?
Yeah.
I'm not jumping up and down and running down the street saying I won the Super Bowl, but I am saying, okay, that's an accomplishment. Maybe it's a first down, right?
How do, how does gratitude increase or improve rather our relationship with our partner? Because that could be a tricky thing.
So it actually improves our relationship with everybody, but specifically with our partner. If we're expressing gratitude to our partner, about what they bring to the world, right? Who they are, in other words, not what they bring to the table, not what they've done for us, but who they are in the world. That, wow, like Sharon, I mean, she's such a wonderful person. Yesterday in church, there was the preacher said, okay, I want everybody to put up their hand who's having a hard time, and somebody else, go over and put your hands on them and give them encouragement. This one lady put up her hand and nobody was going to her. So Sharon got up from like the middle row and she goes all the way to the front and puts her hand on this woman who just burst into tears
Mm.
and turned around and hugged her. Well, that is saying you deserve this because of who you are, right?
Yeah.
Without even knowing this person, right? Now, the
Right.
beautiful thing is we know our partners. So we can say, I love these things about you. I love that about Sharon. She's jumping up, boom, goes and does that. And maybe it's significant to me,
Yeah.
right? And so being able to express gratitude to your partner for who they are is so important. What it does in the brain is it actually releases the connection hormone, the love hormone, the trust hormone, the safety hormone, oxytocin. And it does it for both parties. So it actually connects you more. Now, that's not to say that every betrayed partner is going to be sitting there wanting that. So
Right.
it may be a timing issue. This may be later down, but is there any harm in actually expressing gratitude for your partner? I don't think so.
Not at all.
It
Not at
opens
all.
that oxytocin, it opens our brains to bonding more deeply with our partners, building trust, connection, safety, belonging, right?
Yeah.
And it's so
I love
vital.
that.
I'll
I
even
love
ask,
it.
I'll even ask Unfaithful, that I'm doing work with, how are you going to help your partner's oxytocin levels today?
Mm. It's
That's for
great.
the more sciencey ones. Gratitude in itself is nurturing and supportive.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautifully said. Nurturing and supportive.
It also enhances mental resilience. So we talked about emotional and mental well-being, and we talked about emotional resilience. The mental resilience is when we're faced with adversity, it's really kind of a lifeline. Gratitude is a lifeline in the face of adversity, because if
Mm.
everything's getting us down, if we can name a couple of things that we're grateful for, that really can buoy us and pull us up out of that seeming sea of negativity. And
Yes.
so it helps us find the good in even the darkest of situations.
I
And
love it.
that ability to see the positive amidst the challenges can help us bounce back from the setbacks, right? It can bring us up and propel us forward. People call it, okay, the silver lining, okay, and maybe a lot of people would go, oh, that's such namby-pamby stuff, blah blah blah, but it works, flat out works.
Absolutely.
I talked about self-worth earlier. Self-esteem is kind of what I'm capable of. Self-worth is how much we matter in the world and to other people. So many of us unfaithful are so full of shame we don't think we matter, right? And
Right.
so that when we do gratitude, it builds this sort of, it's a knowledge. I call it a humble knowledge, right? Because it's not this inflated ego, look at me kind of thing. It's just this humble knowledge inside that there are things to be grateful for, and we matter. So the more grateful we are, the more that grows, and we gain sort of new realms of understanding and belonging about ourselves and with others. So I think that kind of leads into, it gives us purpose. We've talked about the difference between meaning and purpose. I think either in a podcast or alone, together, just conversing.
Right.
Purpose is sort of derives out of meaning. Gratitude is sort of that fuel, which is what that purpose is, really the drive. So if we find meaning, then that's our platform for purpose, right? The purpose grows out of the meaning, and then it's fueled by the meaning. So gratitude can help keep that fueled. So when we feel and express it, it's going to make us want more of it, right?
Yeah.
Kind of almost get greedy for what we feel when we're grateful. So, wow, Okay, that's kind of, if you're going to call it greed, I don't know if that's a really good word, but to want more of it really can be motivating to us to keep doing what we're doing and seeking ways to keep improving and having more to be grateful for.
Awesome. So for those that are listening and watching, how can they practice gratitude? What are some of the things that you suggest?
So a daily practice. So these are different things. So you can kind of choose from these, right? They don't have to be everything. I do. You can just keep a gratitude journal. You don't have to do a journal like I was describing, but just write down what you're grateful for each day. And this is particularly important: why you're grateful for it. Don't skip that,
Yeah,
because people say,
it's
"Well, I'm
good.
grateful for my dog." Well, why? I'm grateful for my partner. Why? Write down the why. It can be a different why every day.
Mm,
The beautiful thing about that is now you've made a note of it, and you can look back for inspiration when you need a boost.
yeah,
Create a morning ritual or an evening ritual, gratitude ritual. So start or end, or both if you want, your day by considering what you're grateful for. It makes it easier if you attach it to a habit that you do already. So honestly, whenever I got up in the morning, I had to go to the bathroom. Well, sat myself down and grabbed my journal and did it right there. Captive audience. So, worked for me, but some people like to read their newspaper and drink coffee. Well, drink your coffee, write your gratitude down, right? Then
yeah,
read the newspaper. It sets a positive tone for the whole day. Or even going to bed if it's at the end of the day. Going to bed content makes a huge difference to your sleep. And that's a big
yeah,
care issue. It's also super quick. It's not like you're, spending hours. Most people think of journaling as, oh, I gotta write 8 pages. Some people do journal like that. Okay, but it's not for everybody.
yeah,
When you have one of those gratitude things listed, express it to the person. And if it's not a person, if you pray, express it in prayer. Express it in some way. Don't hesitate to tell or call or text or even write a handwritten note, because people actually, believe it or not, like that and still do it, to let people know how much you appreciate them. Express gratitude to your partner. I mean, that goes a long way. And guess what? It was a big missing component before recovery.
yeah.
I guarantee there wasn't that much true gratitude being expressed. It also strengthens the coupleship.
Got it. What's next?
Focus on the present moment. If you're in the present, you aren't in the future or the past, and you can actually better appreciate things. If you're constantly worrying, you're in the future. If you're currently feeling shame or guilt, you're in the past. I'm not saying don't feel guilt, it's very useful. And future is great for planning. That's great, but then get into the present, because then you're actually going to appreciate what there is. If you need to figure that out, take a time out and notice what's around you. There's this little thing called five senses, right? Use each sense. Oh, what do I smell right now? Touch something. Oh, that feels rough or smooth. Use your eye. What do I see? Do I see a particular color? Ground it. You ground yourself in the present then, because you can't help it if you're doing something like that. You got to take time for reflection. That's also in the present too, right? So if there's something challenging happening, take time to reflect on that. Look for the lessons in it. Look for the silver linings, even when things are tough. That's going to help you find gratitude in adversity and pull you out of the adversity like we were talking about.
Mm,
So this next one, I made up this word when I was writing the notes. Gramble. Don't grumble. So, okay, it's funny to me. Anyway,
yeah,
what I mean by that is amble. Go take a walk in a natural area. Pay attention to the beauty and the wonder all around you. Literally stop and smell the roses. Right. So, if you take that walk in nature, it's amazing. Here's one that is really good, a gratitude box. So find a box. It could be a shoe box. Go to arts and crafts store if you want. Decorate it. That's fun because it makes it yours. I mean, also that creativity we talked about earlier, that can come out. You don't have to though, but it's your box. It's now what was called, we think of it as a sacred container. You write down what you're grateful for on a small piece of paper, fold it, put it in the box. The physical act of doing that actually reinforces it in your brain.
Hmm.
which is really important. You want to establish those neural pathways, right? And if you don't know much about that, go back to the only short we have so far in our list of episodes and take a look at that. It explains it. So here's another take on it, though, that you can do, and you can make it a family or a couple box. And the beauty here is kind of similar to when you've written stuff down, you can go back to it. Each one of you is just writing things randomly that you're grateful for. Throw it in there, or daily, whatever you want. Throw it in there. And then at any time, you can open the box and just pick one out and read it. And that,
Great.
that's awesome because then you're not just reading your own. But if it's a family thing, it really brings you together. It releases that oxytocin. You know you're doing it. You can do it together, write your own each note, exchange the notes, look at them or not, and put them right in the box. So
I love it.
we talked about making this a regular thing. I like to do it every day, but I like to have one day where that's sort of my focus for that day. Now, I worked with this great therapist named Diane, and when I was working in substance abuse a lot, and she did this one group every Tuesday, and she called it Gratitude Tuesdays, and
Hmm.
I just loved that. So you have one day a week where you take that extra time to reflect on your gratitude. Right? You can now, in her case, she was doing it with a group, so they were sharing that together. You can do it with some of your support, some of your friends, your family, your partner. I like in particular having that one day. And hey, gratitude stays is sort of built in, right? So those are some different ways. There are some other ways as well that you can certainly look up on the internet and see, what people suggest for gratitude. But I think that's a really good place to start.
I think gratitude is a secret weapon because there are times when life gets really dark and really hopeless, and finding something to be grateful about, even when you are facing massive trial, hopelessness, despair, disillusionment, can be just another kind of weapon to fight back against it, to get out of bed, to go to work, to read, just to kind of get living, even sometimes. And, as we say goodbye today, wherever you're at, whatever you're facing, it might be really good to ask yourself, how much urgency do I have in my recovery? How much gratitude do I have in my recovery? We are just overjoyed to get to do this. We're honored that so many of you continue to reach out. You're always welcome to email us. You can email us at asktheunfaithful@gmail.com. We do answer our own email, but it might take a little bit. And if you'll just be patient with us, if you are interested in doing some coaching with me or an intensive with James and Sharon, we would love for you to reach out. James, if they are wanting to talk to you and Sharon about intensives, there's nobody better that does intensives for individuals or for couples. How did they find out more info about your intensives?
Our website, hope4us.com and /intensives, although it's fun to look at the whole site because it's very visual.
It
Um,
is.
and there's plenty of links where you can send an email to Gail, our office manager, and she can give you more information.
As always, we are so thankful. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Soon you'll have all of our podcasts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. And we'd love for you to leave a comment. We'd love for you to like and follow. Have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, wherever you're at, whatever country that you're in. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Ask the Unfaithful.